You are behind the wheel on Interstate 5, heading north through Washington on an ordinary Tuesday morning. 40,000 vehicles will cross this stretch today. Most drivers glance once at the snow-dusted peak rising to the east, then return their eyes to the road. The mountain looks peaceful. It has looked peaceful for 45 years. 3.5 miles straight down beneath that crater floor, fresh magma is pushing upward into a hidden reservoir the size of a small city. The rock above it is fracturing in microscopic, almost silent shudders. Each fracture is an earthquake. Each earthquake is a receipt. Mount St. Helens is writing receipts again. The United States Geological Survey felt roughly 350 of them directly beneath the volcano in recent months. 38 arrived in a single week, the largest registered magnitude 2.0. 95% were too small for any human to notice. On the surface, nothing moved. No plume, no ash, no visible change in the shape of the mountain. Yet in June 2024, the Cascades Volcano Observatory issued a 3-paragraph notice, and for the first time in more than a decade, used one specific word: recharge. Geologists speak that word carefully. Recharge means new magma has entered the upper reservoir and raised the pressure inside the system. The rock does not melt. It cracks. Weston Thelen, the research seismologist who watches these signals every day, puts it plainly. Recharging is just the way we talk about the little pieces of magma moving. Seth Moran, who once ran the observatory, uses a different image. In essence, what we have is a blood pressure cuff continuously on Mount St. Helens, and we are taking its pulse. The pulse is elevated. Imagine you are standing on the crater rim at first light. The wind cuts across the jagged rim where the north face once stood. Below you, the 1980 crater is a gray bowl. 3.5 miles beneath your boots, the pressure is climbing molecule by molecule, crack by crack. You cannot feel it. You cannot hear it. But the instruments can. They have been listening since the IMUSH project buried 2,500 seismometers around the mountain between 2014 and 2016. Those instruments mapped the plumbing and upper reservoir between 2.5 and 6 miles below sea level, in a deeper hot zone reaching 16 miles down. Magma rises from the deep zone into the upper chamber. When enough arrives, the pressure must go somewhere. Sometimes it bleeds off quietly over years. Sometimes it does not. Recharge sequences have happened before without eruption. They occurred from 1988 to 1992, 1995 to 1996, and 1997 to 1999. Each time the mountain refilled, cracked, rumbled, and then fell silent. The 2004 to 2008 sequence was different. It built a lava dome inside the crater the size of a skyscraper. That one erupted. Which sequence is this one? Nobody on Earth can tell you yet. The June 2024 notice was careful. It said recharge events can continue for many years without an eruption. Many years. Or not. The activity quieted through late 2024 and into 2025, but it never returned to the old dormant baseline. On January 3rd, 2025, the weekly update still listed the mountain at alert level, normal color code green. Then on September 16th, 2025 hikers and tourists reported smoke rising from the flanks. Rangers investigated. It was not smoke. It was 1980 ash still lying on the slopes 45 years later, lifted by wind. The ghost of the last eruption rising off the mountain was mistaken for the next one. On January 30th, 2026, the Army Corps of Engineers made an announcement that did not trend, did not break national news, but should have. They will raise the sediment retention structure on the North Fork Toutle River. Construction begins summer 2026. Deadline October 2027. They are racing the mountain to understand why you have to follow the water. The North Fork Toutle flows west out of the volcano's shadow. It joins the main Tuttle, which joins the Cowlitz, near Castle Rock. The Cowlitz flows south into the Columbia at Longview. This is the Lahar Path. This is the map of May 18th, 1980. Let me walk you down it. Total Washington. First in the path of any Lahar pulse. Castle Rock, Washington. Population roughly 2,400. Interstate 5 crosses the Tuttle River here on a single bridge 1 mile south of the confluence. That bridge carries the main north-south artery of the entire West Coast. The BNSF Railway main line runs parallel. Kelso, Washington. Population roughly 12,000 sitting at the Cowlitz. Longview, Washington. Population just under 38,000 at the Columbia. Home of the Port of Longview, one of the Pacific Northwest's major bulk cargo ports. Kalama, Washington. The next port downstream. And then the Columbia itself, the federal navigation channel that feeds Portland, Oregon, a city of 652,000 people 50 miles south. In 1980, the Lahar reached the Cowlitz near Castle Rock by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It reached the Columbia by evening. It dropped the Longview shipping channel from 40 feet deep to 14 feet. Deep draft ships could not move for weeks. The Columbia, the main artery of Pacific Northwest commerce, was effectively closed. Now imagine you are one of the 40,000 drivers crossing that Castle Rock Bridge tomorrow morning. You are listening to the radio, thinking about work, about school drop-off, about the price of gas. You do not look east. You do not see the mountain. You do not know that 3.5 miles beneath it, the rock is still cracking. What would you do if without warning a wall of mud and rock and trees 30 feet high came surging down the Toutle at 30 miles an hour? Would you have time to reach higher ground? Would the bridge still be there when you tried to come home? The statewide population living in mapped Lahar zones around Cascade volcanoes is 191,555 residents, 108,719 employees, 433 public venues, and 354 dependent care facilities. The Longview-Kelso Metropolitan Statistical Area alone holds 113,982 people. When you add Interstate 5 corridor traffic, Columbia River shipping, port workforce, Portland's downstream exposure to a channel closure and tourist day population in the blast and Lahar zones, the number of Americans whose daily lives sit inside the Interstate 5 and Columbia River Lahar exposure corridor crosses 300,000. 300,000 receipts waiting to be written. Now go back 45 years to the spring of 1980. Harry R. Truman was 83 years old. He had owned the Mount St. Helens Lodge at Spirit Lake for 54 years, 5 miles north of the crater. When evacuation orders came in April and May, when sheriff's deputies came, when reporters came, when his own family begged him, Truman refused. He told interviewers the mountain would never hurt him. He said he and the mountain were the same age. He gave one-liners, poured whiskey, and stayed. On the morning of May 18, 1980, at 8:32 a.m. Pacific time, the north face of Mount St. Helens collapsed in the largest subaerial landslide in recorded human history. 3.3 cubic kilometers of mountain came apart. The lateral blast that followed began at roughly 220 miles per hour and accelerated past 670 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound. It flattened everything within 19 miles. Harry Truman was buried with his 16 cats under roughly 150 feet of debris. He has never been recovered. He did not believe the warnings. The warnings were right. 45 years later, the warning is a word: recharge. 350 earthquakes, 38 in a single week. Magnitude 2.0 largest, 95% invisible to humans. 3.5 miles below sea level. 2.5 to 6 miles to the upper reservoir. 16 miles to the deep source, 45 years since the mountain last spoke, 57 dead when it did, 3.3 cubic kilometers of mountain gone, 670 miles an hour at peak blast, 150 feet of debris over Harry R. Truman, 20% sediment capture at the dam today, 113,982 in Longview, Kelso, 191,555 statewide in the Lahar zones, 652,000 in Portland downstream. So ask the questions no federal agency will answer on camera. If this is only recharge, why is the Army Corps of Engineers racing to raise the dam by October 2027? If there is no reason to be alarmed, why did the word recharge appear in a federal notice for the first time in a decade? And if Harry Truman, who knew that mountain better than any geologist alive in 1980, could be wrong about what it would do, what exactly are the rest of us sure of? Here's the part that does not make the headlines. The real danger is not the dramatic eruption everyone pictures, the black column of ash, the glowing avalanche, the blast that levels forests in minutes. That story is already written in the history books and in the crater itself. The danger that keeps engineers awake at night is quieter, slower, and already underway. It is the mountain's own past destruction, millions of cubic yards of loose rock ash and debris being washed downhill every time it rains. That material is piling up behind a dam that was never designed to last forever. The sediment retention structure on the North Fork Tuttle was built in 1989. It is 1,888 feet long and 184 feet high. It was meant to catch 258 million cubic yards of sediment and to last until 2035. It was effectively full by 2012. Today it captures only about 20% of the sediment that flows past it. When it was new, it caught 80%. The valley floor behind it has risen roughly 100 feet with packed volcanic debris. The Corps will spend between $25 and $100 million to raise it. They are in a race they did not choose. The mountain does not need to produce another 1980 scale eruption for the consequences to be catastrophic. A moderate lahar, triggered by heavy rain on loose slopes, or by a small flank collapse, or even by the increased seismic activity that comes with recharge, could deliver enough sediment in a single event to overwhelm the current structure. The Corps knows this. That is why they move the project forward, even while the volcano's alert level remains green. If the dam is overtopped, or fails before the raise is complete, a surge of mud and debris could reach the Cowlitz and Columbia faster and in greater volume than in 1980. The Interstate 5 bridge at Castle Rock could be undermined or buried. The shipping channel at Longview could be choked again, this time for longer. Portland's economic lifeline could be severed for weeks or months. 300,000 people would feel it in their commutes, their jobs, their supply chains. Not because the mountain exploded in fire, but because it simply kept giving the river more of what it already carries. Could a single intense rainstorm on already saturated slopes, combined with the ongoing microfracturing beneath the crater, send a pulse of sediment large enough to stress the dam before October 2027? Engineers are planning as if the answer matters. Could even a modest seismic swarm, nothing like 1980, loosen enough material on the crater walls to create a small but fast-moving debris flow that reaches the river and amplifies the next rain event? The instruments are watching for exactly that possibility. Right now, there is no deformation of the volcano's surface, no measurable increase in gas output, and no acceleration in the rate of earthquakes that would indicate an imminent eruption. The alert level remains green. Past recharge episodes have ended without catastrophe. The mountain has been quiet enough in late 2024 and 2025 that some days the only signals are the normal background hum of the earth. These are facts. They're important. they're also not the whole story. The mountain is still writing receipts. The sediment retention structure is still filling one storm at a time. Interstate 5 traffic is still crossing the Toutle River on the bridge at Castle Rock. 40,000 vehicles a day, most of them never looking up at the mountain to the east. On the slopes, 1980, ash still lifts in the wind and is still mistaken for smoke. If you lived in Castle Rock or Kelso or Longview, would you want to know that the structure meant to protect your town from the mountain's leftovers is already past its design capacity and is being raised on an accelerated schedule? Or would you rather keep your eyes on the crater, waiting for the kind of eruption that makes national television deep beneath the crater floor? 3.5 miles down, the magma keeps rising. The rock keeps cracking. The pulse stays elevated. 45 years since the mountain last spoke, and somewhere in the dark it is clearing its throat. What do you think the real warning is, the word the scientists used, or the dam the engineers are racing to finish? Tell us in the comments. And when you drive that stretch of Interstate 5 tomorrow, take one look east. The mountain will still be there. The question is whether we will still be ready for whatever it decides to send down next.